Good afternoon. I call to order the Lake Havasu City Council work session on Tuesday, January 24th, 2023 at 4:30 p.m. If you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Item 3 is roll call. Ms. Williams, if you please call the roll.
Council members Nancy Campbell. Here. Michelle Lynn. Here. Cameron Moses.
Here.
Jenny Koch.
Here.
Jim Dolan.
I am right here.
Vice Mayor David Lane.
Here.
Mayor Cal Sheehy.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 4 is our public hearings. Item 4.1 is the AP Triton's presentation of Lake Havasu City Fire Department operational study. Chief Palafis.
Mayor, Council, I want to thank you. It's been a long year to go over this comprehensive study, putting it together. I also want to thank my team, that everybody that took the time and citywide to help us put this study together. This study is a comprehensive study of the entire fire department, looking at all aspects of the fire department from the top down. We've learned a lot through this process. This is going to provide us a guide for the next 5 to 10 years. There are recommendations in there that we have accomplished, and during the presentation, I'll introduce our project manager, Bill Boyle from AP Triton, has been through this entire process with us, with his team. And there are things I'll call this a working study. We have done some great things in our department and for our city while we were going through the study. There's a lot of data, a lot of information. It is very thick, and I'm sure all of you got through it in one sitting, so I appreciate that. The thing is, too, is if you have any questions whatsoever, this is the community study. This is for us to move the fire department in a direction. We also looked at some of the things that we need improvement on. And it's okay to be vulnerable and looking at things that we need to work on. But there's a lot of great things at our department and a lot of great things for our organization moving forward. And I'm going to turn the presentation over to Bill Boyle, our project manager, and then after the presentation, we'll be more than happy to answer any questions. Bill?
Thanks, Chief. As Chief mentioned, my name is Bill Boyd. I am a retired fire chief from Bellingham, Washington Fire Department. Retired back in 2012. I went into the private sector as an regional industrial safety manager, and then transitioned into fire department consulting. Since about 2017, I've traveled around the United States doing similar studies to this: organizational analysis, strategic planning, operational assessments. And I was in at the beginning of this project with a team of 6 people. And I came out last July and did the site visit. There was a team of 3 of us. I met some of you during that period of time and interviewed several of the staff. I want to start the presentation off by saying we were extremely impressed with the professionalism of this organization and the city employees we interacted with. And we really enjoyed your beautiful city here. In fact, my wife and I, we were on our way back up to the Pacific Northwest and spent an extra couple days and contributed to your tax base in some small way. This presentation is designed to give you about a 20,000-foot view. You've got a 280-page plus document in front of you. I'm only going to cover the first 160 pages. No, I'm just teasing. I'm just going to hit the high points of this document. And I know that you got this document a little late. There were some last-minute edits or changes that we needed to make to it, and we did that. And I apologize for you not having a huge amount of time to really go through it. But hopefully I'll be able to give you a broad brush overview and stimulate some discussion and questions that hopefully we can answer. And to reiterate what the chief said, there are things, and this is a snapshot in time. We started this project last winter and then came out on the site visit in July. And so a lot of the information we're covering is in the 2018 through 2021 timeframe. 2022 is its own separate kind of animal. And so it doesn't include a lot of information from 2022, but so it's from the 2018 to 2021 timeframe. So the scope of work, distilling down the scope of work, we were brought on board to conduct a community risk assessment, a all hazards approach of looking at what your hazards are in the community. We were asked to, and we were informed that there was efforts underway and discussions going on with your regional ambulance provider, River Medical, to look at the implementing a fire-based ambulance transport program in some fashion. Obviously, we were asked to look at the current deployment of resources, where the incidents happen, what kind of incidents, emergency incidents does the department respond to, and then also look at ways and how the command staff collects and evaluates data, not just incident response data, but also pre-incident planning, inspections, fire code enforcement, and so forth. And then look at the administrative side of the house, the financial administrative work rules that impact not only operations, but overall city budget. Based on that, we developed a whole list of recommendations that are at the back of that document, and we also prioritize them in short, mid, and long-term priorities. We sent out a list or a set of data tables, 32 of them, in fact, for the department and the city to complete. We asked for a lot of information. And along with that information, we also asked the chief to say, okay, what are your critical issues that you want us to look at in this study? And he wanted us to look at the staffing levels. Do they have enough operations staff, administrative staff to do everything that needs to be accomplished in an ever-expanding mission for fire departments? He wanted us to identify what barriers there were to accurate data collection and what methods could be used to improve that. And in fact, right off the bat, and the chief will vouch for this, we ended up getting some bad data to begin with. And that's part of this iterative process of data collection. It stimulates the department then to immediately say, oh, we need to be doing a better job here. We're going to implement some changes. And they did that. Looked at the current workflow and budget practices, especially in the operations side of the house with scheduling, to figure out if there's ways we can improve and efficiencies could be obtained. And then look at the fire-based ambulance transport program. What might that look at? What are the options? Look at methods and processes for short and long-term planning. I'll talk about that at the very last recommendation tonight. And then look at what is the need, if there is a need, for future fire stations to meet anticipated increased population and service level demands, and where might those stations be located? So let's first of all just talk about kind of where the rubber meets the road, and that is service delivery and performance on the emergency operations side of the house. As I mentioned earlier, we looked at data, and we got very good data, incident response data from the fire department, very clean data. And we were able to do some fairly deep dive in the time frame from 2018 to 2021 on their emergency response performance. And as I go through these next tables, especially on the response time analysis, we do not, as a company, and actually as a fire service, we analyze response times based on what's called fractile response times. What is the response time performance to 90% of the incidents? Okay, so that's how and that's an NFPA standard, and that's what we measure against. So looking at just the number of calls, historical service demand, the chart in the upper left, between 2018 and 2021, we saw about a 15.5% increase in emergency incidents over that period of time. What's interesting is we see a constant increase here in that upper left on those bar charts. Other studies that I've done over the last couple of years have seen actually a decrease in emergency incidents, primarily due to COVID, where in the emergency medical incidents went down during that time frame. It seems kind of counterintuitive, But what the hypothesis is, when we've interviewed the departments, is the incidents went down because people were very reluctant to go to the hospital to call 911. They either just go to their own doctor or just gut it out, whatever. And it had a direct impact on EMS delivery. That's not the case here, and we don't know why that is. But as you can see in the bottom right, the majority of the incidents are EMS related, almost 70%. That is very common across the board. We typically see anywhere between 60 to 80% of all emergency responses are EMS related. For those fire departments that respond to EMS incidents, either as a medical first responder and or an ambulance transport agency. Responses by apparatus. Now, these numbers reflected here are the responses, not the incidents. And the reason I'm making that differentiation is one incident could have 2 or more responses by apparatus, either a medic unit, an ambulance, or 2 engines, or an engine on a ladder truck, or in the case of a structure fire, multiple units going to that single incident. So these are the number of incidents, the number of responses that the frontline engines and the medic unit responded to during that 2018 to 2021 timeframe. And as you can see, truck/engine 1, because it was cross-staffed for a while, so they go back and forth, aggregate those together. Engine 3 and engine 5 were the busiest units in town. In the bottom right, this is the number of responses by station, by fire station. And these are based on the number of incidents. These are the number of incidents that were responded to by each of these stations. And you can see the highest stations again were 1, 3, and 5 at 23, 23, and 22% respectively. Another aspect that we look at, and it comes into play in some charts here in a little bit I'll talk about, is when do the incidents occur? Emergency incidents don't occur uniformly throughout a 24-hour period. They're almost always based on human activity and influx of people and outflux of people and commuters into a community. And that is certainly the case here. One of the things we were kind of surprised about is on the upper table there, we looked at the number of incidents by month of the year. And as a recreational area, we were thinking we would see them go way up in the summer and then maybe come down in the winter. We didn't really see that here. That trend line you can see stays pretty flat across all months. The same held true for day of the week. However, the biggest change, which is not unexpected, we see this in almost every study we do, is there's a real ramp up starting at about 7 in the morning, as you can see in that bottom table, through mid-afternoon, and then goes down about 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock at night, starts to go down. And then over the nighttime hours when human activity is low and people are, commuters have all gone home and businesses have shut down, the call load drops way off. That is very common. The other thing we did is we took all of the incidents for the time frame of 2018 and 2021, and we took every address and plotted it using GIS magic mapping tools and created an incident density map. And the orange is the highest density level. The kind of tan color next to it is less dense, and obviously then it goes to the green, which is the least dense number of incidents per square mile. And on that table or on that chart up there, if you look, one area I'm going to point out is there's an upper density up here, right up in here. There's a smattering of more incidents compared to this area in here and certainly out here. And I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. we'll revisit that. But those areas of pocket density kind of got us thinking. It was kind of interesting. We also plotted out the location of every structure fire. And as you can see on the map up there, they're fairly uniformly distributed. We thought we would see them a lot more kind of aggregated in the high density area of the city, and that's not the case. One thing is, and I think this is worth pointing out, this study, this jurisdiction, this city is the first city I've worked in doing a study that has a required residential sprinkler ordinance in place, and new homes are getting sprinklers put in there. That's outstanding. That affects how insurance rates work, and it also the best fires are the ones that are either prevented or are put out or held in check in the incipient phase when they first start. It's been well proven the residential sprinklers do that, and this city is to be congratulated for having that ordinance in place and having that forethought to have citizen safety as number one. The other thing we looked at is not only the number of incidents and how busy the units were, but also how busy how much time were they engaged in an emergency incident, not just the number of emergency incidents, but the amount of time that they were engaged in an emergency incident where they were not available to respond to another incident. Okay? There was a study done in Virginia a few years ago that looked at where is the thresholds by which a unit is considered to be too busy and it's not efficient, and basically the unit is overloaded from a workload standpoint. And as you can see on the bottom of that table, the workload is 16 to 24% is the ideal range, and anything over 30% engagement is kind of a breaking point that a department needs to look at adding resources or redeploying resources. And you can see on these engines in the truck company, the aggregate in the far right column is they're within the ideal range. So they're not overworked currently. I will note that engine one and truck one, those two percentages should be brought together to reflect the 9%. But everybody is pretty much in the ideal range. The other analysis we look at to determine how busy a unit is and their availability to handle calls is we look at the number of incidents citywide that happen at the same time. One or more single incidents or two or more incidents occurring at the same time. And as you can see on this chart, 53% of the time a single incident was going on within the city at a time. Okay, but over 47%, or about 47% of the time, two or more incidents were occurring. That is not insignificant. It's not onerous, it's not over the top, but that just needs to be accounted that 47% of the time in the city on any given day, 24 hours a day, there's two or more emergency incidents going on at the same time, being responded to out of 6 stations. Okay? We also looked at the wait probability based on the day of the week. Not day of the week, the time of the day. And as I mentioned earlier, that previous chart, daytimes are much busier than night times. So the wait probability where at any given address, the odds of another unit, an engine having to respond into that first response territory to cover an emergency response because another unit, the primary unit's already engaged, the percentage of time is shown by day and by night. And as you can see, the daytime probability goes up pretty significantly compared to night. Nothing from our standpoint, it's nothing that's over the top. It's not super concerning, but it does reflect the activity that goes on daytime versus nighttime. I will bring up the point that this is also the time as a department that they're conducting training, they're doing logistical things, they're doing pub ed classes, they're also engaged in non-emergency activities. And across the board, in all the studies that I've been involved with, that sometimes creates an inherent tension of how do you conduct training, get your training done? How do you take care of these pub ed responsibilities, getting your inspections done, your pre-fire plans done during daytime hours? That's the nature of the beast. Last but not least, we looked at the actual response time performance to emergency responses throughout the city. We look at these, we benchmark these against the NFPA standard, and we parse them out by how long it takes to process a call by the dispatch center, how long does it take a crew to get on the unit and begin rolling to the call once they're notified of the call, how long does it take them to travel to the call, how long does it take them from the time they're notified to get on scene to the call. And then the total response time, which the public is it's most visible to the public, is what was the time from the time they picked up the phone to call 911 until a fire truck or an ambulance shows up at their door. Okay, the red numbers you see on your screens there, that is the NFPA benchmark standard at the 90th percentile. That's what we measure against. So minute 4 for call processing time, a turnout time of 1 minute for EMS calls or non-fire or special operations calls, a minute 20 if they have to put their turnout gear on, like for a structure fire to respond to a fire. NFPA gives them an extra 20 seconds, which is really nice of them. 20 seconds is not very much time. A 4-minute travel response time from the time they begin rolling till they get on the scene. 5 minutes for response time from turnout time plus travel time, or 5:20 for those additional 20 seconds that's added in the turnout time. And then the total response time of 6 minutes and 4 seconds, or 6 minutes and 24 seconds. I did not include the call processing time in these slides. I just counted the department impacted, the department influence time, which is the overall turnout time performance. As you can see in 2018, it was 2 minutes and 6 seconds. And then it went down to 1 minute 45 in 2021. I don't know why that is. We're not sure why that is, but you can see the incremental decrease from 2018 to 2021, a pretty significant improvement on that. This is the one aspect of emergency response that the department has direct influence on. Because it depends on how the station is laid out, what the crews are doing, how fast they get to the rigs. That all has an impact on turnout time. Travel time, however, the next chart, the one in the middle, the first arriving travel time, they can't teleport to a call, right? That's the travel response time is influenced by the location of the incident, the location of the fire station, the condition and the barriers placed by traffic, weather, traffic calming devices. All of that have a direct influence on travel time. And as you can see, the travel time increased slightly from 2018 through 2021 at the 90th percentile, from 7 minutes, 18 seconds to 7:34. That could be just a reflection of, again, weather, or it could be a reflection of how busy the city is getting and we'll talk about the population increase, that maybe increased traffic has influenced that. Then last but not least, the total response time performance has gone from 8:36, which is interesting. And this is the total response time performance is influenced by primarily influenced by the decrease in the turnout time. So you'll see in 2018, the 90th percentile was 8 minutes and 30 seconds. In 2021, it's 8 minutes and 34 seconds. So the increase in the travel response time was offset by the decrease in the turnout time of the crews, the crews increasing their speed and getting to the rig. The other thing we did in looking at response times is we mapped, using GIS information provided by the chief and the GIS department of the city, using the parameters that are in the city's GIS database and the station locations, we modeled a 4 and 8 minute response time from each of the station locations. And there's pretty good coverage here. Let me pull this up real quick. 79.2% of the incidents were within 4 minutes of travel from a fire station, and 99% were within 8 minutes of travel from a Lake Havasu City Fire Station. That's really good. But I do want to point out, you can see between stations 1, 5, and 4, that gap, that light green area gap. That gap correlates with that previous slide I showed where there was those 2 pocket densities up there in the northeast side of the city. There's a gap there we identified. So we'll talk about that, and I'll mention that in a little bit here. We also looked at population growth. We did that 2 ways. We looked at it using a Microsoft logarithmic built-in feature, took the historical population of the city. Then we also took some information, one of our consultants took some information provided by the state of Arizona or one of its subsidiaries, nonprofits, and parcel those together to show potential population density. And I want to just reiterate here, this was done in 2021, in part of 2022. We did not have 2022 data. The chief told me this morning that the 2022 numbers that we come up, that we hypothesized here, the bottom right, the total service demand projections, they've already exceeded those. They had over 10,000 calls last year. So, you know, we try to use a crystal ball, but as you know, with any kind of projections, they're a estimation, they're a projection, and the farther out you go, the wider that gap gets where your error factor kicks in. But it shows, let's see here, increase at about a overall increase of 5.61% since 2010 and 33% increase since 2000. We also did a big chunk of this document is the community risk assessment. And just for brevity's sake, I'm not going to get into that because it's extremely detailed and it covers natural, technological, all kinds of hazards that are present or not present in this area, region, and specific Lake Havasu. And that is, I'm not going to cover those here tonight. Those are covered in great detail in the study. However, the information that was in there was used in making a lot of our recommendations. So let's talk about the EMS and patient transport, because this was a big part of our scope of work for this study. And a lot of effort went into analyzing the questions around fire department-based patient transport, how EMS is currently provided, and our thoughts and recommendations going forward on this. It was understood coming into this project that there's been ongoing discussions between River Medical and the fire department related to EMS transport. So there's no surprises here. So we kind of came into this a little bit in the middle of it. And the department's already providing primarily a backup role, operating a medic unit or an ambulance or a response unit, I should say, out of Station 1. And they've been in ongoing discussions with River Medical about revising the certificate of necessity to allow the fire department to do ambulance transports and then, you know, do cost recovery and billing and so forth. So we spent a considerable amount of time looking at that. This is a picture of the current service area by River Medical, which is provided by AMR. I'm using those terms interchangeably. And as you can see, it's a large area. And one of the things that struck me, not just looking at this map, but the region as a whole, and the chief probably backed me up on this, is Lake Havasu City is somewhat of an island. It's the biggest fire agency. It's the response resources from outside the city are fairly far away, correct? I mean, they come some distance. So likewise, the two ambulances, the River Medical ambulances that respond within the city here can get tied up doing transfers, emergency incidents, and all it takes is a significant incident. Let's say a car wreck with 5 or 6 patients, which I believe you had here fairly recently, that generates a need for multiple ambulances. And at the same time, it needs to be acknowledged that that doesn't stop any other emergency incidents from occurring in the city, okay? Time doesn't stop. You know, there's other people that are still having problems, heart attacks, breathing difficulties, strokes, and so forth, that still require an EMS response. And so that's kind of how we went into looking at this, as we were doing this analysis. We looked at the operational performance, the transport volume. We were fairly limited in the information. My understanding is we were limited in the information we could get out of AMR. So this information, some of this information was provided either from the hospital or some of it was from AMR or the fire department. So the number of transports they did in 2021 was 4,169. The challenge in 2020 was, and 2021, the 2020 was we didn't have full year data in 2020, so we had to extrapolate it to 2021 to come up with that number. And as you can see, from 2018 to 2021, the service demand has increased significantly over that period of time. And again, I'm trying to figure out how COVID impacted that, and apparently it didn't here. And as you can see, the highest percentage of EMS incidents are medical in nature. One of the things that we noticed in this study is you have a fairly aged population here in Lake Havasu City. And that'll show up here in another slide in a minute. But and so that drives primarily a medical demand for service. People with chronic issues, heart issues, diabetes, you name it, related to elderly. And ground level falls is that's a big one that we tend to see with the elderly. And those all drive the type of incidents that fire department responds on and AMR responds on. So we looked at the feasibility of fire-based transport, and that was to help give the department information they need to successfully obtain a certificate of necessity, along hopefully with partnership with River Medical. The negotiations have been ongoing. I got updated information this afternoon. I'm sure the chief will talk about that at some point, that those negotiations are bearing fruit. They're continuing to talk, and I'm sure you guys will be talking about it. Right now, the fire department can't recoup costs for transporting or assisting in delivering patients to the emergency room. Can't do it by law without a certificate of necessity. So we evaluated 2 options. Now, before I get into these, the first thing, the question was asked, well, isn't status quo an option? Keeping things the way they are. Of course it is. But the issues, pro and con for status quo, are pretty self-explanatory. It's basically what you're doing right now, and you can continue to basically subsidize the ambulance service that's in place by providing that surge capacity without recouping the costs. And we felt like we wanted to focus on coming up with alternatives to that, because the ship hasn't sailed, but it's in the canals heading out to sea as far as the discussions go. So we wanted to support that effort as best we can. So we looked at what are the pros and cons of doing a joint ambulance operations with River Medical and or doing it all internally, okay, doing the whole thing. Now, hang on a sec. Let me check my notes here real quick. So in option one would be basically adding one ambulance. They're currently operating one ambulance now, but adding another ambulance, so there would be two ambulances stationed in the city out of stations 1, 2, and/or 3. Right now, one ambulance is out of station 1, so the other ambulance would be out of station 2 or station 3 to provide additional response and ambulance transport capacity to the overall system and area served by River Medical and now would be Lake Havasu. So the plan would be that 2 ALS units would be staffed, each with an EMT and a paramedic, and they would be equipped along with the River Medical ambulances with automatic vehicle locators, and the closest ambulance, regardless of the agency, would be dispatched to the incident. That is the best way to go, no doubt. There's no turf battles. Whoever's closest goes on the call. The department feels that they would transport about 50% of the patients with whom transport was indicated in this scenario. Option 2 would be you would have 3 units in the city. River Medical would provide only backup, but primarily all of the responses would come from Lake Havasu, and they would be placed in these 3 fire stations, 1 in each fire station. The average time on task we estimated in looking at how this would work would be about an hour per incident. About 45 minutes to get on scene, evaluate the patient, treat the patient, transport, another 15 minutes at the hospital to drop the patient off. And 15 minutes is still a little bit short depending on how critical a patient is, but 15 minutes to drop them off, clean the rig, go back in service, and be able to respond to another call. We also estimated that we figured it would require about 7 people to maintain a single 2-person medic unit 24 hours per day, based on leave coverage usage, 2 people per shift. It would take 7 people. Now, they have 3 shifts, so 7 doesn't divide by 3. So either you go down to 6 or you go up to 9. And what that does is it directly impacts the amount of overtime coverage needed to provide to ensure that there are enough people to staff those units on a 24/7 basis. Now, we also looked at okay, what kind of revenue might be generated by doing this. And we looked at it in 2 ways. We looked at it by staffing an additional unit and handling about half the calls, or doing all of the calls in the city. And we used the information that we got from the hospital and from the state on what that might look like. And as you can see in that top table, as I mentioned earlier, there's a pretty significant, the population here is somewhat aged, and that reflects in the Medicare and Medicaid, managed Medicaid programs. And over 60%, 70% of the medical care insurance coverage here is Medicare, Medicaid. And that is influenced by Medicare law. The reimbursement rates fluctuate. They typically don't recoup the total cost of providing the service. Some agencies do better than others, but those are and then commercial and private pay makes up about 25%. So you can see it's a pretty significant number. The bottom one shows the potential amount of revenue generated for those 4,820 transports. It ends up being about $5.4 million of revenue. But as you can see, the column to the left, there was $9.2 million in charges. So a little more than half, or a little less than half, is not recouped. So next what we did is we costed out our estimate of what it would cost to staff 1 unit to run the joint operation, or 2 units if they did a standalone, the city did a standalone ambulance transport program. And the bottom line is $771,000 for 1 unit, or $1.5 million for 2 units, not including capital costs related to buying an additional ambulance. Okay. So let's talk about findings and recommendations. And again, there's a lot more detail related to this the non-operational aspects of the fire department's operations in the study. But I'll cover some of the major findings that relate across the board to this organization. And we came up with about 40 recommendations, and I'm just going to hit what I think are the key ones, or we think are the key ones here, and the rest of them are in the report. The number of personnel assigned to operations has not been enough to cover the historical leave usage. What that means is the vacation, sick leave, or what they call PTO leave usage used by the operations employees has required significant use of overtime, off-duty overtime, callback, occasional holdovers where they couldn't get somebody to come back to work and they had to hold the off-going crew member in place, pay them overtime until they could be relieved. And we did quite a bit of analysis on this. The chief and I spent hours on the phone talking about how the leave usage is used, how it's scheduled, and going through the numbers. And using formulas, identified that the historical leave usage, how that was covered, and the number of employees total assigned to operations really wasn't enough to cover the number of leave hours. So if they add this ambulance, and I understand the SAFER grant is coming forward to you folks, and it was awarded, which is great. 11 people were approved by a SAFER grant. Congratulations on that. That's huge. That's a great program the government has. And that happened when? September, October? August. Got the award on that. And that will go a long ways to alleviating what I just talked about with the operations programs. It just needs to be emphasized or reinforced that more people you add to operations increases the amount of leave usage and the number of people or hours that are going to need to be covered to provide the needed benefit PTO leave usage. So it can kind of snowball. Some of that could be offset by how the chief, the battalion chiefs, deputy chief schedule and track and allocate leave usage. And we identified in talking to officers, talking to firefighters, talking to the chief, and looking at the programs and procedures in place that there was some inefficiencies there. There were errors in overtime tracking hours. There was multiple codes used. There's 2 databases that don't talk to each other between payroll and the internal department scheduling programs that lend themselves to inefficiencies and errors and challenges in making sure people are scheduled appropriately. Scheduling in the fire service is art as much as science. It was kind of like herding cats to try to figure out if there's a silver bullet to better manage scheduling. And every study I've done, the experts for scheduling within the organization are typically the battalion chiefs and the deputy chief, sometimes the chief, depending on the size of the organization. And they get really creative. And there is no silver bullet, but there are things that, and we pointed this out in the report, that could be done to, we think, improve how scheduling is done and how things are tracked that would hopefully impact use of overtime. So we recommended that collaborate with the Firefighters Association, use a team approach to figure out if there's ways to change procedures to track and schedule PTO leave coverage, and I'll leave it at that. We looked at the Fire Prevention Bureau, and this is no slam on the staff that are allocated to that department. But by and large, when there's changes or there's cuts that have to be made in fire organizations due to budget issues, the last thing really to be cut is operations, fire operations, service delivery, emergency service delivery to the public. So typically things that get cut include training, some of the support activities like training, fire prevention division, pub ed programs, things like that get cut or de-emphasized. I'm not saying that happened here, but the number of commercial occupancies in this city is very significant. And the number of inspections that are done and pre-incident plans that are current. And just so you know, a pre-incident plan is a diagram and information related to a specific occupancy business to help firefighters if they get called in the middle of the night or they go on an emergency response. They can quickly pull up that information and identify all the hazards and special layout features and special processes being used in a particular business. Okay, that's what I mean by pre-incident plan. And we think that program needs to be bolstered. Both the inspections and the pre-incident plan program needs to be bolstered. So we think additional fire inspectors should be hired to conduct those inspections and support the pre-incident plan program. Talking about fire stations. When we came into the study, there was discussion about is there a need for another fire station? And sometimes when we come in and do these studies, we equate it to, hey, we're going to come in and look at your watch and tell you what time it is. So that's what we did in this particular case. I mean, you saw those two maps up earlier, and I'll show you another one here in a second. Yes, we think you should be considering the construction of a Station 7, and I'll show you the map here in a second. We also think Station 6 station is too small. The apparatus bay in particular, the aircraft, the ARF truck, the aircraft crash fire rescue truck, and a structural engine are backed in, and there's like a foot or 2 foot of space between the apparatus doors and actually between the rear bumpers of the two units. That's not a safe configuration. That building it's not big enough to house both of those programmatic responsibilities of structural firefighting and aircraft firefighting responsibilities. So we think it needs to be replaced and or renovated. And really the location of that station should be looked at as well. As you saw in the earlier tables, the number of calls out of that station are pretty low. Now you have some high value businesses out there, some warehouse, like a Home Depot, I think, or something out there. What's that? Mall. High value, but again, they're also sprinkled. And, there's nobody there at night. It's mostly daytime. Those things need to be discussed. We also think that the city's fleet maintenance facility needs to be expanded and or a new one built that would hold a ladder truck. You can lift them up. The mechanics can work on them. This is no slam on the mechanics or the fleet maintenance people that do yeoman's work and try to maintain the apparatus. But those are specialized pieces of equipment, working on pumps, transmissions. It's not like working on a semi-truck or a guzzler truck or a street sweeper. These apparatus have to be flawlessly maintained and reliable on a structure fire. That's their primary mission. Going back to the Station 7 location, looking at a location for Station 7, the map on the left is that previous map I showed you, and I showed you that response gap, that 4-minute response gap on the left. Right here. And the map on the right is we located a station, and I can't remember the name of the street, Chief. Is that McCullough?
Sloopton McCullough.
Okay. We did a hypothetical station location there, and that appears to be a good spot for that station. especially as the growth that I understand is coming to that area takes place. That would be a great spot. If I remember right, driving that's an uphill run all the way from those other stations, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, it's an uphill run, and fire engines don't go tremendously fast uphill, believe it or not. Moving on, we think the training division needs additional support. In talking to the chief today, reinforced kind of what we were thinking here is the department is fairly aged. They have a lot of people that are coming up for retirement, potentially, as they hire these additional firefighters going forward. The training division is going to need some additional operational support on either a temporary or permanent basis. We think it would be prudent to have a training captain or a person assigned to the training chief that would be a hands-on delivering and overseeing training and coordinating training on a daily basis to all the crews. We think the EMS program needs additional support, and by that we mean we think that the engine companies could add some response capacity by responding alone to lower acuity incidents. The dispatchers currently ask a series of questions. We call that triage. And they query a caller to find out not only the location of the emergency and what kind of emergency it is, but they use a criteria. They ask a set of questions that help identify or narrow down how serious is this incident. And on these lower acuity incidents, perhaps an engine company could go first and determine, in fact, okay, yeah, this patient needs to be transported, could have a medic unit, an ambulance roll out there, transport the patient and or treat the patient at the scene and leave them. We do think that the department, the city, should move forward with getting a limited certificate of necessity for the ambulance program. And with that said, we do think years down the road, that would probably be in the best interest to migrate to a city responding primarily, city-only response. Okay, and the reasons for that are anytime you're dealing with multiple agencies, you can have different medical directors, different equipment. All that needs to be super coordinated. You have different chains of command. Scene operations can get a little bit clunky. I'm not saying it can't be done, and we see it working fine in a lot of places, but that needs to be kind of in the background of thinking about, is that something as this moves forward and gets implemented, if it gets implemented, that may be something you want to look at in the future. And last but not least, this document should be used as a foundation block for the department to update their strategic plan. Their current strategic plan, it's not really current, it's obsolete. There needs to be another strategic planning process that takes a lot of the information in here and really comes up with goals and objectives and timeframes for implementation and prioritization of ensuring that the department, as it moves forward over the next 2 to 5 years, is in a position to adequately meet changing service demand in the city and maintaining or hopefully enhancing service to the citizens. So that's it. I've blasted through a lot here. So I'll be happy to answer any questions, or try to anyway, if you've got some.
Yeah, Chief?
Yeah, Mayor, I just want to make some closing remarks just on some of the things that the study has provided us and what we have accomplished so far with our study. And we took some of the recommendations throughout the process, and looking at the scheduling of the firefighter, we're working with the association and our battalion chiefs to come up with a more efficient way of scheduling. We did get the SAFER grant with 11 individuals. January 9th, we hired 8 of them. February 20th, we're completing the rest of the SAFER. We had some individuals that did resign and retired. So the study is correct that we're working on our retention and our recruitment. And some of the things to highlight too is our partnerships with the high school, with MCC, looking forward to building that pipeline for us, which, is documented in the study, but I just wanted to get this out to you, some of the positive things we have. Our residential sprinklers are required in certain areas based on code, up access points or the height of the building, and all of our commercial, just to highlight some of those areas. Our Fire Prevention Bureau too is, we started a 7G program, adding additional inspectors to the Bureau around the study when it was being done in the last budget, which you approved. We just don't have enough further data to have the workload to identify how much further assistance that we do need. We do have the recent retirement of our Deputy Chief of the Fire Prevention Bureau happened in February. So we're making adjustment. It's a good time to look at restructuring and keeping that focus on customer service, mentality and common sense when looking at education and enforcing the code. Station 7, the data's there. The recommendation is spot on. That is the location that is needed for that location. And now we have the justification for it. Station 6, appreciate the safety. Absolutely. Number one priority. Right now, that is meeting the needs of our organization. And we can adjust with apparatus placement and just making sure that our firefighters are being conscious. But when we appreciate the recommendations from the study, and we look at all of them too, looking at the training division, that's something we're going to accomplish through our strategic planning process, looking at action plans for each of these individual short-term, medium-term, long-term recommendations provided by this study, and just see if that's going to meet the needs of our organization. One thing I want to really stress is our constant communication with River Medical and looking forward. And we're going to provide you a presentation at our retreat in regards to the medical transport to give you a little bit further detail. The conversations has been great. We've been working really well with River Medical, and we also we're forming that partnership, and we have that partnership with River Medical to do the joint CON, and we'll talk further about it. But that's more of we talk about redundancy in our system. We want to create that redundancy with a private-public partnership. And I think it's important that our relationship has increased over the time where we don't want to push anybody out. We want to work with them and add more resources. And our focus with River Medical is strictly to enhance patient care and the ability to enhance the quality of life for our residents. Our demand is getting higher, and the thing is, we see that gap, and the study has provided that information. Is it feasible? Yes, it's feasible. Is it going to allow to have two providers in the system working side by side with each other? Absolutely. And private-public partnerships with good leadership and good support do work. But we are a non-for-profit organization. We're making sure that we just cover our cost with providing additional service, and that will be further discussion that we will have. Overall, I think the study has provided us that foundation that we need to move our department in a forward-moving direction. You saw that we do have some areas that we need to improve on, and that's fine. We are going to improve upon them, and it just takes time and step by step. The study also looked at some of our infrastructure, our stations, and we are in the process of doing a property condition assessment with building and maintenance. So looking at that. The fleet, we're also working side by side with the mechanics to see if we can provide any additional training to make sure that our apparatus is in top-notch condition. But it's also important to understand, too, is that we do have an aging fleet, but we also have a plan for that, too. So the thing is, I wish we could build them, but we can. And the process is taking a little bit longer. But I have to say, I appreciate the study and the support for the study because it's going to give myself and my team direction to move the department in a better direction. And it's all focused on the taxpayer and the community. That's what our drive is. We're only here to serve them and the visitors that we have here. And we do have an aging population that we need to take care of. And it's really about customer service first and data-driven decisions. But the top priorities that we have is, number one, we got the staffing. We got that through the SAFER grant. Appreciate that support and the effort that my team took to move that forward. Second, we have the data and information to start planning for the future for Station 7. Number three, we're going to go work and continue to work with our partnership with River Medical to see if we can move in that direction of having that partnership and having that program sustain itself without adding any additional funding or taxes to the taxpayer. So overall, it's been a long study, very comprehensive. It was a pleasure to work with AP Triton. It was blood, sweat, long nights, a lot of justification in regards to questions that individuals had about the study. But the study is our study, and it's for our community. And the thing is, it's going to provide, again, myself and our staff the direction we need to go to move us forward and continue to provide the best level of service for our customers. So I just want to end on that. And I thank you for this opportunity. I thank AP Triton. I thank my team again, River Medical, for working with us and making the community better.
Yeah, thank you, Chief. All right, there is a lot of information contained in the presentation this afternoon and also in the full study, which is over 250 pages, which has numerous operational and infrastructure and future planning components put into it. And thank you, Chief, for your vision to bring this process forward. And now we have some information on things we can do going forward to make our department better than it already is today. So with that, are there any questions for the Chief or Mr. Boyd from members of the council?
Sure.
Yeah, please, yes. Yeah, Councilmember Campbell?
Yes, Mayor. Thank you again for the study. It was quite enlightening. It was a lot of information. A little bit over my head, I'll admit it. So I like to reach out to some of the citizens in the community, and I did. And some gave me some consultation, which was wonderful because you've spoke with them as well. I brought you into the conversations prior. One of the recommendations that first off, it seemed that through a lot of these recommendations, most of them are already in place. I mean, I was told since a lot of these were in place since 1982, at any particular time, did something change where we had a budgetary issue that a lot of them were taken away and then brought back? And then you mentioned that there's two questions here basically on this one. You said that it didn't start until 2018, this particular study. So the people I was talking to was saying a lot of this stuff, check, who's in charge today, and all this is just very redundant. And we've been doing this for years because we're trained, certified fire personnel. And this seems common sense to us. I don't understand why it's being brought. Was there a budgetary issue that made it that we had to shrink some of these departments down or some of these services down?
Well, the study, the data went back from 2018. There was obviously the Great Recession in 2008 that really impacted Havasu and the entire city, entire fire department too. And the thing is, there are some things that are common sense approach, but we have an agency coming in, giving that balcony view, and it's nice to having a progressive chief that's on top. Industry standards, best practices. There are some things in the recommendations that we are doing. It's just being pointed out. And I know I don't have any specifics, but if you have specifics, we could talk about it. The thing is, when I came here in 2020, we didn't have a hazmat team. We had a TRT team that was just kind of limping along. But the thing is, that was previous administrations that we looked at that there was some deficiencies or programs weren't just happening. The thing is, it's just having a new leadership coming in, looking at it and analyzing, coming from a different perspective of professionalism in the department, is this looking at it in a global view, but some of them are common sense. But the thing is, those are things that we're working on. If you look at it, a lot of the studies into when they look at recruitment, retention, I mean, we kind of repeat the same thing, but obviously it's not working if it continuously to be in the report. So that's just thinking outside the box. But just getting back to the question, if there's specific things that have changed, they have, because I've looked at them too, and I've brought back the hazmat team. We brought back the TRT team. We're looking at different deployment models to run more efficient. The reason why the response times dropped is because of the technology we have that we brought in to have live CAD monitors in each of the stations, so they actually see the call simultaneously right when the dispatcher hits the call through the processing. That was an improvement by us. And I'll tell you, us as a group is because, you bring an idea forward that's going to help out. Our number one priority is providing the best level of service to the community. That's what we're going to do. It's truly about continuous improvement. And the thing is, sometimes when people have been out of the fire service for such a long time, they just remember what they were in. So things that are ever changing. And the thing is, we have to grow with the system too. And I think that's what's important. The thing is, the study too is a snapshot. So it's like I tell the individuals on our department is data is important to us because it's telling a story. But if you're not putting the correct data, I have the wrong story. So how can I sit up here in council and provide that information? Is it correct? That's what I want to make sure it's correct, so you feel comfortable with the decisions that I'm giving you, and the information I'm giving you is correct and accurate, so we both make good decisions. So, I mean, I understand, and sometimes it's hard because sometimes these studies do get beat up a little bit. And the thing is, but I have to tell you, I'm proud of this study, and we put a lot of time in it, and there was a lot of interesting conversations we have, but there's a lot of things that we have identified. But we also identified things that we need to work on. We're not perfect, but the thing is, we can move in that direction. It just takes a team and dedication to all of us to be on the same team. To have that one team concept that the philosophy is here, and the ultimate customer is, this is what we're here is to serve the people. So I know I totally went off track with your comment.
No, it was great what you were saying, and I agree with this because when you're a business, sometimes protocol is out there. You just kind of have to constantly remind people what protocol is and all of that. I just was told by some that they were quite concerned, like, where did all those go? Because they were already there. But you answered the question on that one. And I do think through a budget situation, there was a lot of things that were removed until we had our budget cap increased. And now it seems like you've looked at all of these and what are really important to us that we need to bring forward. My one concern, and here we go, is one of the top recommendations was evaluate the current recruitment and hiring practices to determine potential barriers and opportunities to increase employee diversity. You're smiling. And that's fine. I don't know if that's for grant purposes, but I'm just going to tell you, as a woman, I never want to be hired because I just was a number somebody needed to fill. And just tell me moving forward that we'll always hire the best and the brightest, because this is serious stuff. This is safety. And I don't want to get into too much of that diversity in Lake Havasu City. I want it to really be the best person for the job. Unless you needed it for grant words, whatever, just bring it back. And I hope that we just continue to hire the best and the brightest.
And we do. We treat everybody equally, and that's
You should.
And we will get the best and the most qualified here. With our program at the high school, giving everybody the opportunity to experience the fire service or get some knowledge. The thing is, when we look at that's a Vision 2020 out of the industry standards when it comes to international fire chiefs and the fire service just in general. But we will hire the best. That's the end. We have standards, and we will stick with those standards to hire the best, to provide the best level of service. It has nothing to do with the grants.
Okay, and I thank you for that. And I just wanted to make sure, because I know that that can divide teams when some people are getting moved up above just by gender, race, color, identity, whatever. I don't ever want to see that.
And you won't see it as I'm the chief. You could ask any of my members that they earn their positions.
I heard it's a lot of work, and I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Lane?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First off, I want to say the one thing that this study has shown is something that most of us already knew. We have a very professional fire department. These people go out there day in and day out doing the job that we ask them to do. And per this study, they're doing a great job and doing sometimes more with less. And we've gone over the years here to fix that issue. I don't have any questions, because my statement is, we hire you. You are the chief. We now know where your deficiencies lie within your department, because you brought that forward to us, so we can look at that. It's now up to you, working with your staff and the association, to fix any issues that you see and to make the plans for the future that you see need to be done. And you've shown us what needs to be done. And then working through the city manager to come up with the money to be able to do this stuff, and then bring it to council. And we will be able to know yes or no, it's what we really need, because we have a copy of the study. I have, and I think everybody up here has already perused it, as we were told. We kind of got it late, but most of us have had a chance to at least go through it a little bit. But thank you to the personnel, the men and the women on the front lines and working in the office from the Lake Havasu City Fire Department. You guys are doing an awesome job, and this study right here proves it. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Vice Mayor. Any, Councilmember Lynn? Yeah, please.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I'm pleasantly pleased with the presentation. I did read through a lot of this and spoke to some people. Super happy about Fire Station 7. Been advocating that since I've been on council. I have a question. I'm going to go a totally different direction, because we didn't talk about it very much, but the community risk reduction program. Do we have a public educational specialist?
So yes, we do.
Okay. So I'm like a huge supporter of the community outreach, and I'm really excited about looking at our fire department, really working with the outside organizations and nonprofits. I mean, we read in here, especially with the problems we're having with fentanyl and opioids. And I think that's my question I have. Did you look at anything like with placements of Narcan and the AEDs anywhere in Havasu?
Did we look at that? No.
Yeah, no.
So, Councilmember Lynn, that's more operational for us. This is more taking that balcony view, and that's something that we can look at. The thing too is just priorities. Like one of my initiatives has always been is making sure that we have working smoke detectors in all homes. I mean, that trying to implement a too close to home program. You know, it's like when you have a fire, then we basically go out and do public education. It's just a quick reminder. Another one too is that we need to look at is our invalid assists. But we have individuals, the aging population, that want to stay at home, and we want to make it comfortable. But the thing too is that staffing and the priorities, and those are things that we will constantly evaluate and put them on a priority. That, you know what, more community risk reduction means less calls, which is great too. But our first priority too is making sure that we have the necessary equipment to provide the service demand for our citizens. But community risk reductions sometimes in the fire service does get overlooked. I'm very passionate about it, but we still, again, setting those priorities and strategic planning will be so important, so we could set those priorities.
Yeah, that's why I just like the partnerships that we have with the other nonprofits and organizations that we can work together in situations like that, improve that. And just one question on the SAFER grant. I love it. I'm glad we got it. What happens when it goes away? Like, how long do we get that?
So we get it for 3 years.
Okay.
So the grant is for 3 years. We're in a situation that we have retirements. All right. Well, I have currently 12 individuals in the drop. I'm hoping with, looking at the feasibility and partnership with River Medical, that potentially we can, that's the plan to fund that. So the thing is, we have 3 years. I'm saying it's going to go by quick, but the thing is, there is a plan to support it.
Okay, that's what I was looking for.
Yep.
Thank you.
Perfect. Councilmember Moses?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Mayor. I mean, just kind of I'm glad you mentioned the 22 data, because one of the first things I was thinking, I'm like, we're making decisions off of data that's, a year old. So, because I was thinking 22 is a big year, and we has to be more response calls, and sure enough, you said there were. So, we can take that into account. And one of the other conclusions I drew is, so the ideal utilization rate, you said, for all of our units and all of our department stations, everything was relatively low, but our response times are a little bit above the average. Am I right? I'm just
Per NFPA standard, but
Right.
the thing is, with the response times, some that skews our data is are out of jurisdiction. When we run all the way down to Bill Williams Bridge and it takes me 20 minutes, that get logged. And that's like, Mayor has asked me too, was why is your monthly reports different? Well, the thing is, I take those out. I mean, that's out of our city jurisdiction, and they get counted. So that's not saying it happens, but it takes, running out to Standard Wash, getting on the scene, at least for Sarah Park.
Right.
There are times that, and then that's one thing I'm working on, is identifying and trying to meet the standards as best as possible.
Right. No, Ed, we have a very tough city. I mean, it's
Yeah.
a giant bowl of spaghetti. We got to figure out, there's no easy way to get anywhere. What I'm, the point I was making when we placed that 0.7, the station 7, I would really like to see what that's going to do. What will that do to our response time? So our investment in that station 7, is that going to result in an overall average of, saving 30 seconds out on average on most response calls? Because seconds definitely matter in medical.
Sure, absolutely. And then, Bill, I'll let you chime in. Station 7 is actually going to take some of the load off of 4, 1, and 3.
Right.
Because you saw that gap in there. It's going to really improve the response time. And they're going to take a workload. And I estimated approximately about 1,500 calls
Right.
from those additional stations. Now I have a closer unit, and that service demand is I'm going to have better response times in that area, because now I have that location where I have a proper coverage across the city.
Yeah. Oh, okay. And thank you. I'd like to see that.
Sure.
Because your utilization rates dictate, no, we don't need another station.
Sure.
We don't even need another rig, or, you know what I mean? But it's the response times are the most critical to saving lives.
Correct. And the thing is, the utilization, Bill, chime in. This was based off a study that was based off a study. So they're using it as a guide. Don't get me wrong, but it's the standard that we try to hold ourselves to. And I guess the utilization is just to say that we have ideal in regards to the rigs that we have in service. If I look at sometimes the utilization is, when I take a medic and go to the hospital and my rig is driving all the way to the hospital. That's this, another thing is their out of service time is increased. But based on the study and when the information they had, I still would like a further analysis of that over a longer period of time. So remember, snapshot in time, going to keep on evaluating so I could show you.
Absolutely.
Can I chime in real quick here? I want to make a point that I don't think I made at the presentation. When we talk about this NFPA response time standards, the 90th percentile criteria, and those 4-minute, 1-minute turnout time, 4-minute travel response time, those are very high bars to meet. And I can only think of one department in all the studies I've done where a department has met the 90th percentile in the turnout time component. And all the rest of them were somewhat, they were only meeting 70% or 60% or, even a lot less than that. Mm-hmm. It's a standard, something to try to achieve, right? Some departments are never going to get there. They don't have the travel infrastructure. They don't have the roadways. Yeah. There's all kinds of inhibiting factors that preclude them being able to meet that. So I want to put some context to those graphs that are in there.
Okay. Or do you mind if I ask another question?
Yeah, please.
Okay, Anton?
Yeah. We are getting really tight on time. We have to open.
Well,
public
does anybody
hearing.
else want to ask? I don't want to hog.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have questions?
Councilmember Dolan or Councilmember Koga, do you have any questions or comments?
Just one, Chief, we've had a lot of conversations, especially for the last 18 months, so nothing in here really shocked me. Was there anything in there unexpected to you or that was a real gem that came out of the study that you're surprised about?
You know what? No, there wasn't. I mean, there's a lot of information, and I learned so much. And I think my team learned too a lot of things that we just need to, what we're doing great, and then what we need to work on. So the thing is, just having that plan moving forward is just important, and this is going to allow us to move forward together because we did it together.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate having the
Thanks.
information, and I appreciate you and your team for all your work. And it's a good study to have. So thank you.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and open up the public hearing. Would anyone like to address the City Council on the fire study? We'll have our regular council meeting will begin in a few minutes, and we'll have discussion for other items at that point, but this would be specific to the fire study. Please just make way to the podium and state your name for the record.
Are you sticking around or are you taking off?
Could you just turn on the microphone, hit the button? Thank you.
My name is Frederick Anthony Graff, and I would like to go and speak to the council on this whole thing, because what is really, really here important is we have a bunch of older people that are here now, and they have to have immediate and response to all of these problems that we are having with the fire department and also with all of the problems that they're having. I'm off aboard a ship. I used to be a firefighter myself, and we used to have to go through rigorous amount of timing and fighting fires because we only had a certain amount of time to get them done, and we had to have it done immediately because it would cause a bigger explosion than what it would have to have. And I just wanted to let them know that we have to go and do these things by having trucks and having people and having the response and having the people there that have to go and be there on a general basis for even responses and for training and making sure that the training is done and done right, so that it is done so that they are responsible for what they do. I was a caregiver myself, and I had to go and come up with another almost $100,000 to go and take care of somebody. And I think that's so wrong of the people that they have to go and take care of, where the responsibility falls back on the person that takes care of somebody. That's my responsibility to the council and to the firefighters, because I understand where you're coming from. I just thought I'd let you know. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Graff. Yeah, please just make your way to the podium and state your name for the record.
My name's Emiliano Torres, and as far as this report, if it hasn't already been done, could this report be made available at the public library? I tried to download it, and I got as far as 177 before the thing went belly up. Okay. So thank you very much.
Thank you for that. Yeah, we'll make sure it's readily available and accessible for all. Would anyone else like to address the council on this item? Mr. Graff, you get one opportunity at the podium. I'm sorry, but all right, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. And I'm sorry.
Corky, I'm the Lake Havasu Professional Firefighters president. I just wanted to say thank you to the fire chief for involving us in this whole process, taking our input, and let's be a part of it as we work through this document. Additionally, I do want to thank you guys, city administration, the council, for putting this amount of resources, time, and energy into looking at public safety, where we're at, looking for our weaknesses, our strengths, our shortfalls, and then with that, just giving us the time or the consideration to adjust those items and work on them. So now we have that document and we can work in that direction. Like you guys said, it's a huge document. There's a lot of information in it. A lot of it we already knew. A lot of it gave us the data that we needed to support what we've been saying. So, the big things just to point out is, like Station 7 is huge for us. That would be huge for the community. We need the staffing. The SAFER grant started that for us, so that's going to help us build in that direction. And then additionally working on that limited CON so we can provide the service for the community that they deserve and they need. So that was all. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. And before we adjourn, One, I would like to just say thank you to the chief again for your vision. Also, I'd like to recognize and thank CERT, who is here for this presentation. It's one of our largest volunteer efforts within our community that helps support the fire services. AMR has been here as well. Thank you. We appreciate that. And of course, the executive board with the association. Thank you for your participation. As we move forward, today's discussion item was to discuss the study, bring it out. We'll have some additional conversations, as the chief mentioned. We'll talk a little bit more about transport during our annual planning session next week, and then future items will come before council that require action of the council going forward. So again, thank you to all, and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. All right, we are adjourned. We will resume our next meeting in just a couple of minutes at 6 o'clock for the regular meeting. So.